G'day painters, today I'm showing how I'm doing the lava bases for my Thousand Suns. Let's get to it. The only thing you really need for these is some cork paint and glue, nice and simple. These were some cork placemats that you can pick up from a bunch of different places like hardware stores or department stores or anything like that. Then I'm breaking it down to a size that covers a decent amount of the base and is big enough for my model to sit on. I do leave some overhang at this stage, it makes it easier later. Once I'm happy with the size, I pick one side of the cork and start pulling pieces off of it to make it more rough and natural looking. I use my plastic clippers for this. I've tried pliers and other tools that I have laying around, and I just seem to get the best result using my plastic clippers. But you should try out what tools you have and see what you're happy with. Once I'm happy with how it's looking, it's time to glue it down. I just use some PVA glue here. If you're looking to work with it without having to wait too long for the glue to dry, you can use a couple drops of super glue too. If you're not using super glue, I like to leave it for a couple of hours at least to let it dry. The reason I'm doing all this over a paper plate is because it makes it easy to keep all the offcut parts of the cork. This stuff makes great rocks and shit for other basing or terrain projects. It's always worth keeping it. After leaving the glue to dry for a couple of hours, I come back with my clippers and trim off the overhang. I still leave a little bit of overhang, mostly to be safe. I'd rather leave extra on it than take too much off. Can't add it back afterwards. This base is for Ahriman, and I'm magnetizing him so I can swap him between being on foot or on his disc. I'm not going to add the time for this to the video because you're not going to magnetize most of your bases, and even for the bases you do magnetize, it'll be different depending on the models and how you're doing the magnetizing. There's nothing fancy here, I just work out a spot that'll work for both Ahriman and his disc, then drill holes in his feet and the disc to put magnets. The cork is a bit more tricky because drills don't work great on it. Instead, I use a pair of my fine tip tweezers and pull the cork until I have a hole that fits the magnet size I want. Nice and simple and means I don't need to buy, build and paint two different Ahrimans. Once that's all done, I prime the base black. I did this with a rattle can because I'm lazy and didn't want to set my airbrush up, but I found that does mean I need to come in with a brush and tidy up some spots. If you do that part with an airbrush, you'll probably have more control and won't have to do this touch up part. Then with Necromancer Cloak, I do a pretty heavy dry brush over the cork. Any dark grey would work fine here. You could also go a bit lighter if you want. I don't want mine to go too bright, so I'm happy with just the one stage of dry brushing. I don't want to draw too much attention away from my models. Time to start on the lava. I start with cool red for the first colour. This will be the colour that's left closest to the cork, so it's the lava that's cooling down. For this I used Wyvern Fury. Then I move to warm colours to start representing the hotter lava. First, it's Resplendent Red, leaving a decent amount of the previous step showing. Once I've established where I want the Resplendent Red, I start doing some glazing just to smoothen out the transition. This doesn't have to be a perfect gradient, but it's worth smoothing it out a bit. And since it's on the bases, it's actually a great way to practice glazing and smoothing out transitions. Then with Angelic Red, I do the same, establishing where I want it, leaving some of the previous layers showing, and then do a bit of glazing to smoothen out the transition. You'll be shocked to learn that with Molten Lava, it's exactly the same thing, just in a smaller area. The next two steps are purely down to a preference thing. I do them because I think it adds to the base, but if you're looking for a more realistic look, then you probably don't want to do this. With Daemonic Yellow, I do the same as the previous steps. I do a bit more glazing here because it's a pretty big jump, so I want it smoother. Then with white, I add just a bit inside the yellow. Once again, it doesn't look like natural, I guess, but I think it adds to the base. Then using black, I come in and tidy up the base rim. And if I've made any mistakes on the cork, I'll touch that up too. This is another optional step, but I definitely think it's worth doing, and it's pretty quick. I get some pure red and I'm just doing a dry brush on the cork to give some OSL. You're just hitting the cork that is facing the lava, where it'd be reflecting onto the cork. The final step that I don't actually have any footage of is hitting the bases with a gloss varnish. This actually adds a lot to the base, giving the lava a shiny look, which I think makes it look more liquid, while giving the cork like a glassy look that you see from lava rock. I just use a rattle can for this, but you can do it through an airbrush if you want. And it's finished. And since just looking at the base by itself is boring, check out Ahriman and his unit of rubrics standing on them. I think they stand out great on the lava bases. 18 minutes is a bit long for a base, but normally you'd be doing them in batches, which would actually bring the time down a bit. But because I did this base individually rather than as part of a batch, it took a bit longer. So at a guess, I'd say it'd probably be around 15 minutes a base, give or take. As always, if you've enjoyed the video, why not give it a like? And hit that subscribe button if you want to see more content from me. Thanks for watching, catch you in the next video.